transition services out of our post-secondary program at Cogswell and the town hall building as well. We're pleased that you all came out on this beautiful night out there. It's great to see a lot of people here tonight. We have Dr. Jane Thierfeld Brown presenting tonight on the transition from high school to college. And so I think we're very fortunate to have Jane, who lives in town and is willing to come and share some of her expertise in this area. So I'm going to just read Jane's bio for us tonight, and then we'll have Dr. Brown take over. So Jane Thierfeld Brown is Director of College Autism Spectrum, former Assistant Clinical Professor at Yale Child Study, Yale Medical School, and a retired Director of Student Services at the University of Connecticut School of Law. She has worked in disability services for 43 years. She holds a doctorate of law, a doctorate from Columbia University Teachers College, and received an honorary doctorate of letters from Muhlenberg College in 2020. Dr. Brown consults with many families, students, and school districts and institutions of higher education and is the transition consultant for Farmington High School. Dr. Brown has appeared on Good Morning America, CBS News, and NPR. She has co-authored Students with Asperger's, A Guide for College Professionals, The Parent's Guide to College for Students on the Autism Spectrum, and Behavior Management and Self-Regulation, along with many textbooks, chapters, and articles. She received a Ron Blosser Dedicated Service Award from AHEAD in 2019. Dr. Brown is married and has 3 children, the youngest being a 32-year-old son with autism. So, Dr. Brown, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Beth. And thank all of you for having me here tonight and for coming out. This was... I thought maybe it would be me and Neil and Beth, because in this weather, why would anybody come out? As you heard in the bio, which is the worst part for me to listen to, I have sat in your seat for a number of years. I have 3 kids, all went through the West Hartford School District. I live right here in town, and I do this work all over the country. I work with colleges all over the country and the school districts all over the country. So I appreciate being here tonight. I'm going to make this as useful as possible for all of you. If there's parts of when we get to questions, and please ask questions while I'm going through my presentation, because if you have the question, other people probably do too. Some of the information I'm going to tell you all, parents and students who are here, and thank you students for coming, because this is really about you and it's really important that you're here. Some of this is going to be hard to hear. It's going to be hard to listen to. Some of it's going to be a little bit unnerving, and that's okay, because transitions are hard for all of us. Adults that go through transitions all the time, and we have to get used to these kinds of things, and we have to work through them together, okay? Anybody need accommodations like slides being visually described? Can everyone hear me? Yes. This is not an amplification mic. It's going straight to the camera for the... Can you hear me? Do you want me to talk louder? Okay. Well, thank you, but I wear 2 hearing aids, so sometimes it's hard for me to know if I'm talking loud enough. So let me know. Just wave if I'm not loud enough, and I will be. Yeah, this sort of messes up your mind, because you're like, wait, it should be loud, but it's not. So the first thing we're going to talk about is language. I'm finding that in the high schools across the country, we're using lots of different terms still, like autism, LD, psych, emotional disability, things like that. When most of the colleges and most businesses around the country are using the term neurodiversity or the singular neurodivergent. And I want to introduce that tonight, because as you start transitioning from the high schools to both work, to transition programs, and to colleges, you are going to be hearing neurodiversity a lot. We've also spent decades convincing the politicians and the educators and really all the corporations to use person-first language, a person with a learning disability, a person who is blind. And now that has switched. And so the self-advocates truly want autistic person, learning disabled student, blind student, which is very different and very different for a lot of us. Even all of our professional associations have moved in that direction. So you're going to hear terminology that is different as you move from the school district to other venues. And I want you to be prepared for that because it is very different. And everybody wants something different. So we really have to find out, what is your student comfortable with? And then is your student comfortable telling people what they would like to be referred to? Some places you can't change the terminology, but some places you can. I want to define neurodiversity for you, so let me read this to you. Neurodiversity is a way of thinking about neurological conditions such as autism, attention deficit disorder, dyslexia, as variations from the typical population rather than a disability. Advocates for neurodiversity reject the idea that it's a problem to be fixed, but that rather that we're all neurologically diverse in some way. Implementing various workplace accommodations, flexibility in the way we interact with others, and acceptance of neurodiversity as a way of life would allow a meaningful percentage of the neurodiverse population to become valuable members of our working community. You can see why a lot of self-advocates prefer this term. Yes?
Has a PMM.
I'm going to need you to repeat that one more time.
When going by that, does it mean that we all have a bit of autism in us?
Maybe a bit of autism, but certainly neurodiversity. Everybody's different. Everybody thinks differently. Everybody
Perceives the world differently, and neurodiversity sort of gives that idea to everybody.
What's the threshold for whether you consider be neurodiverse?
People are neurodiverse with a number of different types of diagnoses. So things like an emotional disorder,
A psychiatric disability, a learning disability, ADD or ADHD, autism, and a host of other things. So it's really sort of what we call an umbrella term, which means that it goes over a lot of different titles. Does that explain it a little bit?
You're neurodiverse.
no, not everybody's neurodivergent. The singular is neurodivergent, but not
Everybody is neurodiverse. No, but a lot of people just prefer that term. So it just seems to make it more inclusive for people. So you're going to hear a lot more of that. So talking about college for a minute, according to a study by ACT, that high stakes exam that some of you might take going to college, 89% of high school teachers believe their students are well or very well prepared for freshman level work. By contrast, only 26% of college faculty members think students are ready. That was in 2013. In 2024, that's down to 25%, according to US News. So a lot of times we think that because what high school has done, that we're ready for college. So I want to ask for folks tonight, how many people are thinking of going straight from whatever program you're in, high school or a transition program? Are you going straight to work? How many people? How many people are thinking of going to community college? A few. Community college? Okay. How many people are in high school and maybe going to a transition program? No? And how many are going to a four-year college? You might be living away at college. If I was asking the parents, you're not going to live at college, you know. Since there are enough, if your child is not here, then you can represent your child. If your child is here, because see, we don't even, at college, we don't use the term child. That is gone. They're students, they're adults to us. Once you're 18, you're the adult. So what am I missing? Am I missing anybody? Going to work, day program, part-time, going to, no? I didn't miss anything? No?
I think one of the challenges that we have as parents is that we don't know yet, what's the best for our kid.
Hopefully
There's
you'll
no
know a
data.
little bit more before the end.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to have more data or, assessment that will help guide us to make the decisions.
Assessment
May not be the most helpful for you. There are not assessments that say, and that's a few slides hence. Let me see if it's the next one. This is what we think tells us about college. Grades in college prep courses, the strength of the high school curriculum. We know we have nationally ranked high schools here in Connecticut. Admission test scores, a lot of that changed with COVID. We became test-free mostly during COVID. However, now 90% of those schools have brought the ACT and SAT back, and grades in all courses. But what we know is that's not really it. It's much more than that. It's really about self-advocacy and self-management. That's really where we are, that we have to think about. There aren't a lot of good assessments for this. Parents kind of know, but you really have to look, and that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. And then let's get back to how do we really know? Because one of those things is executive function. And executive function is basically what got you all here tonight. Somebody said, we got to eat dinner a little bit early, and then we have to leave 10 minutes before because I have to park at town hall, get to the 4th floor, and get into the room. That's that future planning that a lot of us parents and many of you students do automatically in your head. We're so used to it. Because we also monitor, did everybody eat? Does everybody have their homework done? That self-regulation of pulling yourself together when you need to, and then, of course, time management. And what I write down here, not the prosthetic frontal lobe, those are those people sitting next to you usually, mom and dad. Did you do your homework? Did you eat your dinner? Did you put your laundry in the laundry basket? Did you shower this morning? All those things that we go through. Executive function happens in the frontal lobe, and many of us as parents act as the prosthetic frontal lobe for our students. And we need to back that off as quickly as possible, because as they launch wherever they are launching to, they need to develop that frontal lobe. And I've seen families that have kids at college that send 40 texts a day to make sure the kid is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And after about the first hour, the student stops looking. It's not going to happen. So we have to develop those skills and stop we call it prompting. Our kids call it nagging, right? We all do it. We've all done it. We do it with our partners and spouses. We do it all the time. And a lot of it is all about executive function. And then there's the self-advocacy. Do you know yourself? Are you comfortable enough with your disability that you know what you need, students, not mom and dad? I'm the person at college that you would come to say, I need extra time or an exam, or I need a note taker. And when I say to you as a student, so tell me how your disability affects you academically. If you have to say, I don't know, ask my mom, I'm going to say, we really have to talk about whether you're ready to be here. Yes. Sorry.
You know how in high school they have like a second teacher in the room for students who have like a learning disability?
Yes.
I know college is completely different, but would they be, like you just mentioned about extra time and tests if needed, or extra little help with sort of project something? Is that like available? Do they have like a program like that? Or?
There are programs. Every college in the
country, because that's financial aid and all sorts of education grants, has to have what we call disability services. Some schools call it access services. And those are services. The big difference is what we call the difference being a push-pull system. In high school and all through K-12, those services are pushed out to the student. So there is another teacher in the class. There's somebody saying, let's do this in a resource room. There's somebody doing that tutoring. In college, the student has to go for the accommodations. The student has to go to the Disability Services or Access Services office and say, I have an exam. At this day, at this time, I'm going to need extra time. And usually there's a form to fill out. They have to go and meet with someone like me and say, here's my courses for the semester. Can we talk about what my accommodations are going to be that I need in these classes? Some of the biggest differences, excuse me. In West Hartford, we're really lucky in that you have wonderful case managers in your special ed department in West Hartford. And I would think your numbers are still for case managers around 15 to 20? Yes? Yes. 15 to 20 is amazing. Out in some other states out west, you're talking 30 to 40 people to case manage. So your students have one person responsible for 15 or 20 people. People who do what I do across the country in disability services in college have caseloads anywhere from 150 to 700. We don't see students every day. We don't see students every week. We can't. The level of service is different. There are also specialized places, colleges that have specialized programs. And usually those are disability specific. So there are specialized autism programs, specialized LD programs, specialized ADD, ADHD programs. And those give you more service. They're also usually fee for service. But a lot of that can be included in your financial aid packages. So there's a difference when somebody says, what are you looking for? If your student needs some of those extra services, then you're looking for a program, a specialized program. And those, I can show you where to find those, because there's lists of them. And we have a few in Connecticut, not as many as I'd like, but we do have a few. And they're growing, thank goodness, as the populations are growing. So that's really the biggest difference. And the student has to take more responsibility, because even with a program, usually when you apply to these programs, one of the first things in your interview is, are you going to work with us? And if the student says, no, my mom made me come here, or my dad made me come here, that usually is going to be a problem for the student. So one of the things, and I was mentioning this before we started, when I'm working individually I do a lot of work, this kind of work with individual families, the first thing I ask the family together is, what's the goal? What's the goal here? Are you looking for a little more independence? And that's one of the things you really want to look at to help you figure out what's next. Are you looking to get some good career education? Are you looking to get a certificate in something that would allow your student to do a trade or a job that they're interested in? Are you looking for 4 years of development towards a degree? And just education for education's sake? Or are you really looking for a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree that will lead to a career? Those are each very different paths. Or you may be looking at work and a few college courses on the side to see if it's something you're interested in. But that's really what you have to look at, and then see how it goes from there. Did I answer your question? Okay. So for self-advocacy, you really want to know yourself, students. You want to know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your interests are. I mean, nothing makes us happier at college than talking to a student who lights up when they start talking about robotics, chemistry, physics, English, whatever it is, that's their passion. And then understanding what works for you. I'm a visual learner. I'm an auditory learner. I won't learn well, Jane, if I'm just in classes where people are lecturing at me all the time. I need to learn by doing. That helps us a lot. We can really help direct students that way. And then speaking up for yourself about your accommodations and other things. And that's what's hard, not only for you, but for your parents, to let you speak up for yourself. Because it is hard. You have to really push your envelope sometimes. But there's this guy that I follow on Instagram. He calls himself the Autism Dad, which I love. But here he quotes Itachi Uchiha, who says, the world only sees the decisions we make, not the choices we have. What we're talking about tonight is what the choices are. And a lot of times, especially since we live in a place like West Hartford, where everybody has the name of that college on the back of our car, we make choices based on what people are going to see. And this is one of those big times in your life and your student's life that you really need to think about the choices you have that are best for that time for that student. I see hundreds of students who may really struggle in college at 18, but do great at 25 or 26. I see lots of people that are in college that really don't want to be, and they go out into the work world and they're doing great. So you really want to think about what the choices are that you have and what's going to work for your student and your family. So let's talk about where families have been. Some of you had a very easy time getting your student a diagnosis, but I see lots and lots of families that really have a difficult time coming to grips with the diagnosis. I often have a lot of families that are saying to me, but don't tell the student what their diagnosis is. And I say, why? Is it a secret? And because I can guarantee you, if you have not told your student what their diagnosis is, what they imagine is much worse than what their diagnosis is. And we see that all the time with students who come to us at college and have no idea, have never been told. And that's really, it's not helping you, it's not helping your family. Getting services in West Hartford, some of you may not feel like this every moment of every day, but thousands of people move to this town for the services. We have amazing services in a lot of Connecticut, but in West Hartford in particular. So you have had the luxury of being able to secure services, where in a lot of other places you just, even if you have an IEP, you can't get the services. But what I like to refer to parents often, while your kids are still in school, you are advocate and CEO of that student's education. When that student turns 18 and when they transition out of high school after the diploma, they become advocate and CEO of their education and their life. Are they getting any training at home? That's really where it has to happen. So we have to consider that advocate and CEO training. And are we doing everything because we just say, shh, I know better? And I did it too. I didn't know enough to say, wait a minute, I got to teach them to do this better. And that's really what we have to think about. Take those years while your student is still here and has all this wonderful support around them, and teach them to be able to be advocate and CEO of their education, of their disability, and their life. Because in elementary and secondary school, it's really different. And then once that student launches, if your student could be really successful at a job, but they aren't asking for any accommodation because they either don't know how to self-advocate or they just usually sit back and let mom and dad do all the advocacy, there isn't an employer who's going to talk to all of you parents about that accommodation. They need to talk to the individual. Yes?
That's the question I've been thinking to myself.
Whenever you need to. If you are in a
School setting and you aren't understanding something and you need more instruction, you need to self-advocate by talking to the teacher. If you're in a work setting and you need more help in order to get the job done, you need to ask, what do I need to do, or how do I do this better or more quickly? You have to speak up instead of, a lot of people, if they don't know what to do or they think they're doing something wrong, they just pick up their phone and distract themselves. And then they usually get in trouble and somebody says, oh, they're not a good worker, they're just on their phone all day. Where instead, if you say, gee, I don't know how to do this, can you show me how to do this particular task again? That's how you self-advocate. You speak up for yourself when you need to. Some of it, it's a good point. Some of it is pride. For parents, some of it is pride too. Because some of the parents want to feel like, I just want to feel like my kid is doing what everybody else is doing. And that's not always the case. And some of it is pride, and sometimes you have to think, is this just about me and who I am, or is this going to make me do better and go farther? But it is hard. It's a really good point. It is about pride. And you have to think about what's more important, your pride or doing a good job or doing well in school. And that's a big difference. Sometimes pride keeps people from going to a tutoring center or a writing center to get help. And then it really doesn't help them in the end because they may not pass a course because they were too proud to go in and ask for help. So yeah, you can look at it as self-advocacy sometimes is about just too much pride because you have to think about it in that way because everything changes once you graduate. The laws change, which we'll go over in a minute. Who's in charge changes. Your parents were in charge, but now you're in charge. The expectations and temptations change drastically, as do the consequences and the accommodations. So we're going to talk about each of these. I want to keep my eye on time. Don't want to keep you here too late. I want to read this to you quickly because this is the kind of emails that I get. I only changed the name of the university. Everything else is word for word from a parent. My son is a freshman at State U. He's studying to be a genetic engineer. He's often complained that the teachers are expecting him to do the same course workload that everyone else is. The only other resources being offered to him is note takers. He can't always count on that. And taking his tests away from the class with extended time. He has Asperger's, and they're wanting him to write all the same amount of essays as everyone else, plus keep up on the rest of the course load. How can I get him more help? The disability services there are in agreement with the teachers. Would you hire a genetic engineer who only took half the classes and only did half the homework? It's not how it works. Once you're in college, if you're going to a bachelor's degree school or an associate's degree school, you have to meet that school's general curriculum. In high school, courses can be modified, grades can be modified. That doesn't exist in college. That's part of the laws that change. You can get accommodations such as more time on a test, a note taker, maybe not taking tests one right after the other, but they don't change the courses. You have to still meet the guidelines. This next one, I won't read the whole thing. The parent wanted a college that would teach to their child's learning style. That also doesn't exist. In high school, they can help direct the program to the child because who's the driver of all this? In high school, it's the parents and the teachers and the guardians, but in college and at work, it's the student. It's all of you. So big question, and be honest, we're among friends here. We all have kids who struggle with lots of things, including me. How many of you are still waking your kids up? I'm so proud that you're being honest. Thank you. Well, students, I just ruined it for you. Last night was the last night. You're all done. The way I explain it to some students is some students, up until they come to college, they're really living in a hotel. They get a wake-up call. The laundry's done. The meals come to the table. I understand. And hotel service doesn't go on forever. And it's time for the students to share their load. They have to pick up some of these chores. And a lot of it, I think that's where you start building not only the skills, but you start saying, you'll show me you're ready for the next step. You'll show me that you're ready to fill in the blank. Get a job, go to college, start your driver's permit lessons. You'll show me when you start taking some responsibility and you start doing some things at home and start asking how you can help rather than being begged 40 times to help rake the leaves. So the waking up is really important, especially once you're not living at home. Limited access, the Family or Federal Education Right to Privacy Act means that at college and at work, all information belongs to the individual. So when you sign what's known as a FERPA waiver, at college and at most colleges, that only means we can contact you in case of a medical emergency. but that's it. Vulnerability. A lot of our students may not have a lot of social opportunity in high school. And if that's the case, once you go off on your own, the vulnerability level is different, no matter where you are. So we have to think about that and think about safety. Courses that were waived in high school, that doesn't happen very frequently. It's really unusual to get a course waived after high school. That's when everybody says, gee, they had talked about this transition program. Maybe I have to think about that. And that's why you want to think about it before graduation. Because, and this actually happened, parents often think, well, you know, my kid's not really keeping up with all this stuff about either applying to jobs or applying to colleges, so I better just read all the emails and I'll reply and make sure they know that we know when it's not a student. We so know. The overwhelming majority of students talk to us in text form, even on email. This actually happened. I was working with a school that shall remain nameless, and they were having some real trouble with a whole group of parents that were working through disability services. And one sent a very long email that was supposedly from the student, and then a follow-up email saying, your system has stressed me out so much, I just signed my mother's name to the email. No, your mother wrote the email, and now you're trying to backtrack because you're writing on your kid's email. Yes?
FERPA laws as it relates to a 17-year-old who, is that still the same?
No. No, FERPA doesn't kick in until after 18.
So are you thinking about sending a 17-year-old off to college? To community college? Different, but they will have you sign forms. Some of them will say, some of the community colleges will say if they have a high school diploma, then we don't think about it. So will they turn 18, what we now know as the Burr babies? Yes, okay. It's all different now because I have 3 Burr babies. We don't worry about it too much. We worried about it a lot in law school, only because they weren't yet 21. And for an about-to-be lawyer, that could be a problem with some of the, let's just say, social activities that occur in law school. So I think you don't have to think about it quite as much, but they probably will have you sign certain forms. If your student, one of my kids turned 18 while they were still in high school, and we had to sign certain forms because of that. So because they then were really responsible, they had to sign that it's okay for parents to be involved. So you'd have to do the opposite. But they still won't let you be terribly involved. That's, yeah, is your student here? No, okay. That's gonna be important, and important for them to know, because it is a difference. So really, it's all about the student getting ready to change, because what we hear a lot from younger students is, my teacher didn't tell me, or my mom didn't tell me, or my counselor was supposed to, and we hear that all the time. And it really needs to change to, I need to make sure those forms are in. I need to make sure I have my assignments done. Those kinds of things, it's taking that responsibility. Again, how do we know when students are ready? That's how we know. A colleague of mine, Catherine Gretschel, who works at Carnegie Mellon University, she's their director of disability services, and this was from an LD advisory group. Your role changes from advocating for the student to supporting the student as they advocate for themselves. Your student may find transition challenging, and so may you. So start early. Remember, too, that making mistakes, even big ones, is part of the learning process, and you can best support students by encouraging and supporting them while giving your adult student the space to do things differently or make a mistake. We often, and I was told long ago with my son, just don't let him fail. Don't let him fail. You'll never come back from that. So I made that net so tight to make sure he didn't fail. But that also was taking away opportunities that I finally realized by middle school that no, we need to loosen things up a little bit and let him try things. And maybe it'll be hard and we'll figure out right away, but maybe he'll go to places that we didn't realize they could go. And in a safe way, of course. None of us wants to send our kids off doing something they're not ready to do. But we have to think about those small steps. So I'm way behind in my slides, but let me just do this, and then I'm going to stop for some questions. So we know in high school you all have about 5 or 6 hours of classes a day. We hope you're doing at least 2 hours of homework. You have a lot of quizzes and non-cumulative tests, and a lot of your learning comes from textbooks. And we're lucky in West Hartford. You have 20, 25 students in a class, and you're in one building. Then you go to college. You now only have 12 to 15 hours a week of classes. So you have to figure out what you're going to do the rest of the time. Like, are you going to have a job? Are you going to be studying? We expect you to put in 2 hours a day per class. Doesn't always happen, but that's the expectation. You're only going to have 2 or 3 exams per semester, and now you're going to have to do your own research and have some primary sources and go out and find things that you're going to be responsible for studying. And you can be in, depending on the college you go to, really big classes. And you have an entire campus that you have to negotiate. Very different than what you're doing in high school. And then, after college, we go to work. Now you're doing 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And usually only you get 2 weeks off when you start. That's when everybody says, what do you mean I don't have the summer off? All my life I had the summer off. What do you mean? Not anymore. There's a lot of different evaluation and feedback, and a lot of our students are really uncomfortable with people critiquing them. There's a big push in college now, or in any post-secondary program, for what we call peer feedback. So you might write a paper and you give it to the student next to you, and you critique each other's work. And a lot of our students might be uncomfortable with that. At work, you have many different bosses and many different people giving you feedback pretty constantly. And all of you adults here who work, whether it's in the home or outside the home, know we have coworkers, we have supervisors, we have administrators, we have lots of people that we report to, and all of them give us feedback in varied ways. And then there's teams. So if you have that as and I'll talk about that a little bit, excuse me, in a few minutes. If one of the accommodations you have is no group work, try and eliminate or fade that as quickly as possible. I'm sorry, I'm losing the voice and I can't yet. There really are very few jobs in the world now, globally, where you don't have to work as a team. There's very little that you can do out there when you don't work with other people. So it's really important. And people imagine that because so many people are working remotely, that you're working alone. If anything, we're doing more with groups online than we ever have. So you really need to be able to function as a member of a group. So if that's an accommodation that your student has, you really want to start thinking about that. But these are big transitions that we're talking about. And they're very different lives, and that's why you really want to think about what's the goal and where are we trying to get to as we leave the high school experience, and what's going to get the student there. Is it going to be a few community college classes? Is it going to be a day program for adults that do some really good job training and leads to a job? Is it going to be working with BRS? Are any of you working with BRS now, the Bureau of Rehab Services? Hardly anybody. Okay. No? Okay. Do the high school students know Level Up as BRS? No. Anybody working?
Some of mine are BRS.
Oh, they are. Okay. How many students are working with Level Up? Oh, good. Okay. Okay, because that's another option we'll talk about. I'm going to skip this. I can send you the slides. So, and I don't want to make you nervous, but this is important, okay? So the things we talk about fading for college and work transition, but especially if you're going to take any college courses, if you get study guides for your classes, And I'm sure a lot of your students do get study guides as an accommodation. Study guide, that doesn't happen in college. Your teachers don't give you study guides. You have to create your study guides. And you now have teachers and special ed teachers who have expertise in teaching you how to do this. In college, we don't have that expertise. So you want to take the opportunity now to learn to make your own study guides. So you don't want to be taking those from teachers. Let me just get through this and I'll call on you. Retaking tests, I don't know if any of you have that as an accommodation. That does not happen in college. So if you get a bad grade, you've got a bad grade. So that's not an accommodation. What I mean by extended or no deadlines, that doesn't mean you can't get more time on a test. You can if your documentation warrants it. But you can't just say, I never have deadlines and my assignments are never due when everybody else is. That we are not allowed to make that a blanket accommodation for a student. If you have a certain issue, we can try and make an accommodation, but we are not allowed to do that as blanket because it's very different in college. If you haven't finished assignment 1 and the class is on to assignment 2, it goes much faster than in high school. And it just ends up with a failing grade. And then the student and the family are saying, why'd you let my kid fail? Well, everything was so late that they could never catch up with the class. One-to-one aids. If your student has a one-to-one aid, you really want to think about what's next and what the goal is. Because we not only in college are one-to-one aids usually not allowed in the classroom. Occasionally they are, but it has to be a particular circumstance. But after high school, it's personal pay. Colleges don't pay for aids. That's considered personal service, just like computers or technology. That's all the student's responsibility. So if your student needed an aid, then that would become the family responsibility. So if that's something your student needs, you want to think about what's next. No group work we mentioned. And the reason I put in all homework done in school, I know, and believe me, I lived that, where the kids come home, they have homework, and oh my gosh, they've put in 300% of their energy during the school day, and they come home and trying to get them to sit down to do any work is pretty impossible. The thing is, at the next step, whether it's work or college, you have to be responsible for your own time and figuring out what to do when. And if everything is structured for you of exactly what to do at what time, you never have that opportunity to learn how to do that. And so at least at home, having that responsibility to say, I need to spend 45 minutes doing homework, then I can play video games, then I can eat dinner. And having that kind of responsibility rather than a parent imposing, it's 3:30, you must do homework until 4:15, or I did all my homework at school, I don't have anything, and I'm playing video games for the next 2 hours. We really need students to start managing their time better at home rather than just doing the everything at school. So let me just get through this part briefly, and then you had a question in back. Do you still have it, or you?
Yeah.
Yes.
How is college so different from normal high school?
It's a whole different thing. The students are older, and there's less people that go to college than high school, so it's usually people that are looking specifically for a certain degree. And not everybody has to go. Sometimes if you want to work with animals, you're looking for a specific degree to allow you to be, say, a vet tech, or you want to be a nurse. And so you're looking for that specific degree. And it's different because you're being trained to do something specific. In high school, or actually from kindergarten through 12th grade, you're getting a broad education. You're learning about a lot of things. And then after high school, you decide what you want to do and whether you want to go right to work or if you decide to go to college. And then you're learning more targeted things. And you're still learning a lot about the world and about history and social sciences and natural sciences. That's why it's different. And it's different classes too. You learn differently with bigger groups. I want to talk a little bit about the law. I'm not an attorney. I may have, it may have sounded like that from my work at the law school, but I'm not. My doctorate's in education and psychology, and that I worked at UConn Law School for many years. But I want to go over this because it really is important, and most people move from high school to college with their students not understanding this change in laws. IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It's what all your students are under now. It goes from age 3 or preschool up through high school graduation, either at 18 or 22. This is a federal law of educational entitlement. Every student is entitled to a free and appropriate public education. The responsibility is the parent and the school, and it ensures success. You can't fail out of special education. It's based on things that we've talked about. You can have modified grades, modified curriculum. The program has to fit the child. That's the basis of the law. So it's based on evaluation, remediation, and accommodations in one of the 13 federal categories as a diagnostic label. Once you get that diploma, you've moved from IDEA to the ADA, the Adult World, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Amendments Acts. This is no longer federal law of entitlement. This is civil rights statute of eligibility. Totally different laws. There is no special education law in college. There's general disability accommodations. The student is responsible, not the parent and the school. And what we guarantee is equal access to programs and services. We have to look at what barriers are caused by each individual's disability and try and accommodate those barriers, the same as we would accommodate stairs with a ramp. It's based on reasonable accommodations, based on level of functional impairment in a major life activity. These are drastically different. But most families are thinking after high school, we take the same program and just move to college, and that's not what it is. Totally different. Does this make sense? Okay, so I have thrown a tremendous amount of information at you. So I still have lots of slides, but questions, things you're thinking about. Yes, go right ahead. Yes.
So does something like attention deficit disorder meet the ADA definition of a disability? Or
I will give it that horribly, yeah, it's already said.
I'm not an attorney. I'll give that legal answer of it depends. Where in IDEA, things are based on diagnosis and evaluation. We base things on your documentation. So if your student comes in to me and says, Jane, here's my documentation, I want to discuss accommodations for my classes, my responsibility to the university and to the ADA, I have to look at the documentation to ensure that the issues rise to the level of a disability. If you have like a minor difficulty in something, it may not rise to that level. If you have a mandated IEP in West Hartford, chances are it's going to rise to that level.
even at the college level, you're saying?
Probably. I can't say for sure without seeing. It's very individualized. We have to go through each piece of documentation and look at subtests and we have to look at all of that. And so often parents will get frustrated saying, well, why do you need all this documentation? I'm not comfortable sharing it. I'm not allowed to give accommodations unless I evaluate that documentation to see if the student needs the accommodations, and I have to determine what barriers need to be removed. You can't just come in and say to me, I have ADD, do something. It doesn't work. I need to figure out exactly what has to be done. And I have to be able to defend that if one of my administrators comes in and says, why all these accommodations? I have to say, because there's testing that shows me A, B, and C without breaking any confidentiality. It's all very private. Yes?
Is there a difference in the In the college level of a 504 versus an IEP?
We don't have either IEP or 504.
A lot of people are often told, well, just put them on a 504, it'll go right to college. It doesn't. It's not part of college. We look at, again, the documentation. So why did you have a 504? And if it rises to the level of us needing to remove barriers, then yes, you get accommodations. So we do see college students with that had 504s in high school. We see a lot of college students that go through a semester and then come in sort of, my mom said I needed to come, or dad said I needed to come. And when we say, well, why? Well, I really struggled. Well, who helped you with this in high school? Well, I had a 504 that, oh, well, can I see your documentation? And when we look, sometimes you only needed a 504 in high school, but when things went quicker and more intensely in college, you needed more accommodation. So we do see that sometimes, and sometimes students front run that when they first come in and talk to us. Some it takes a little longer for them to come. Yes?
I don't know the right term.
Doesn't matter.
You guys are already talking about, but the programs you said earlier, do you apply to those while you're applying to college, or like is it after?
Let me
You have
show
it,
you. You're talking about specialized programs.
Yeah.
Let me show you. I have a couple of slides. I'll go back to this. Hold on one second. Okay. So this is one of those
Programs at Kutztown University in Pennsylvania. They have a specialized autism program called My Place. And, sorry, I dropped the mic for a minute. I just have a couple slides of their requirements, just to give you an idea. And this is just what I have highlighted. Freshman applicants must be admitted to Kutztown University through regular admissions and demonstrate readiness for college-level work by having completed high school-level college prep courses in a regular ed classroom setting without modifications or the support of a one-on-one classroom aide for at least the last 2 years. Very specific for this program. Each one is different, but that's what you need to look at, because what they found in this program is, because I worked with them for about 5 years, they found they had a lot of students coming in whose courses were so modified that when they got to college, they just were not prepared, and they had aides for so long that they really needed more help than a college can't offer one-to-one support. Again, you know, the college-level disability services people have between 150 and 700 on their caseload. One-to-one is not an option. So now this is just one program, and then there's another example for living on campus. I won't go through all this, but on all the websites, it gives all the specifics. And then they say about student responsibility and self-advocacy. Ultimately, the student has the responsibility to let you know if they're not receiving accommodations that have been authorized and the faculty member's been informed of. So more about that student being able to self-advocate, really important. And each program's different, so you want to find the programs on the website once you've narrowed down where you want to look. Yes?
Modifications, is that different than accommodations?
No. Yes, very. Okay. Because all students have
Accommodations, yes. It's a very hard, we don't use the word modified in college. The part of the law that says modified is for employment and disability. We don't use modified because we cannot change. The law for college says we may not fundamentally alter the curriculum, which means if the faculty says, here's what I'm teaching, that's what they're teaching. I can't change it. I can give more time for a student to take an exam. I can give a note taker. I can give a visual description of the slides. I can do lots of things in the classroom. I can give a specialized desk and specialized technology. I can't change the curriculum, so I can't modify. I can't say the whole class is doing assignments 1 through 5, you're doing 1 and 2. The whole class is writing a 10-page paper, you're writing a 5. No, that doesn't exist in college. If everybody's writing a 10-page paper, everybody's writing a 10-page paper. That's the big difference. Yes, go ahead. No, don't apologize. I'm just going back to where I was.
Classroom that is
not a modification, but a classroom that has maybe there's 2 teachers versus 1 teacher, kind of a modified class, but it's not.
Yeah. I would.
I think if a student's trying to go to a particular program and the only modification they had was a, what do we call it, a 2-teacher classroom, a support team teacher, if they have a team teacher, thank you. I'm not sure that would eliminate someone from a program, but again, that's one program, and that's and they're a smaller program, and they want to keep it small because they find that the programs that are out there are looking for students that can be successful in their program and their school. And that's what they have found to need in order to make students successful. So, and I find the same in job programs. I work a lot with BRS, the Bureau of Rehab Services. And for some of those specialized programs, they're looking for students who would be successful in that job. I'm answering a lot of questions. I want to ask a question of the students for a minute, if I can. And you only have to answer if you're comfortable. But how are you feeling about all this information? Is it overwhelming? Is it scary? Is it what you expected? Give me one. Not too shabby? Great. Anybody else?
No, a little bit overwhelming.
It's overwhelming?
Yeah, and some of those classes from my head with a lot of terminology, and to be honest, it's a little hard to understand all the information at once.
It is. This is a lot, and it's also
A lot of varied people in the room. Some people looking to go to college, some people looking to go to a community college and take 1 or 2 courses. Some people who are here tonight want to go to a day program and maybe think about a college course later on. Some want to go to the, we call it the transition program. Yes, some people, the 18 to 22-year-old program here in West Hartford, which is great with all that work opportunity. So there's a lot of information coming, and a lot of it may not pertain to you individually, but it may pertain to somebody else who's here tonight. Anybody else? Any of the other students have specific questions, things that you're thinking about?
I'd just like to add, on behalf of my student,
yes, please.
just like a big aha moment in listening to all of this is learning that what our students have presently is not necessarily the degree of support or services they will have in the college education setting. And I was under the impression that to some degree, like the IEP or the 504, like that you took that with you. Like it's yours and you get it and yay, and off you go to college and you keep getting all these services. And so that's a big aha moment for me.
Over all the years I've been doing this, and over
40 years. I look at IEPs. I do look at them, but they have very little to do with what happens at college, honestly. It has to do with your student, and it has to do with very specific kinds of accommodations being made in a K-12 setting, and it has very little to do. The documentation, like the people who have actually evaluated your student, tells me a lot more, as does some of the teacher references or SOPs, the summary of performance, that actually tells me, which is usually just a paragraph, but it tells me if the student is a more visual learner, or the student is still learning to self-advocate, or that kind of thing coming from a case manager tells me a lot more. An IEP that says student will complete assignments with 80% mastery. You know, in my world, well, that means you're not going to get 20% of your assignments in, which means you're starting with an 80 and you might go down from there. It doesn't make sense in my world, in college. You know, so a lot of what happens in high school on the IEP just doesn't translate to college. It's not part of our world because it's really kind of apples and oranges. I look at them because some of them are important. I also look at all of the accommodations. And often they are longer than my son's, who is very significantly impaired. And I'll say, so of this, what did you use? Oh, I only used extra time. And I'll say, people must have worked hours on putting all this together. Yeah, I never used any of that. And when I hear that, it kind of breaks my heart to think about the number of professional hours taken to do all this paperwork that the student's not using. Either that or they're not being upfront with me. But sometimes people walk in with IEPs this thick, and I'll see this list of accommodations, and immediately it makes me think, is this student otherwise qualified to be here? Because if you've got that many accommodations, and a lot of us as families, and believe me, I was there too, no, don't remove that accommodation. They might need it someday. And if it's off the IEP, they might not get it. We all feel the same way, but really, you want your student getting less accommodations as the years go on to make sure that they are ready for whatever is next. If they need the accommodations, then please give them to them. I mean, my son did not go to college, and it wouldn't have been appropriate for him. So all the accommodations on his IEP not only needed to be there, we probably needed more. So it depends on your student. That's what's important. Other questions? Or should I go back to? Okay, let's go back. Oh, did I miss somebody? Yes, thank you.
For college, if you have accommodations, the accommodations, like if you don't know how to make a study guide, what accommodations that help you make a study guide in class, or is it all up to you?
It's a good question. Will the accommodations that you might get in college help you make a study guide?
The accommodations probably won't. They will send you to a academic success center, otherwise known as the tutoring center, and someone there might be able to help you. But the reason I encourage you to get that knowledge while you're still here in high school is all those special ed teachers here have knowledge in how to teach you to do that. Once you go to college, in academic success centers, there'll be a couple of professionals, and the rest are usually what we call peer tutors. In other words, other students who have taken courses and done well, and they're going to help you in that class. So they may be able to help you put together a study guide, but that's not going to be a specialty of theirs, where now it's a specialty of all your teachers. So rather than I work with some school districts across the country that have outlawed study guides for the entire school. Now, I can imagine trying that in West Hartford and even saying that and it being recorded. I'm going to get emails from, and that's okay. Because the administrators at those high schools have said, we learned over time that study guides were not helping our students long term. And we're not interested in just students getting into college. We're interested in seeing them successful and graduating. And if they don't have some of these skills, it's not going to help them. So, it just depends. If you need the study guides, you want to sit down with your teacher and say, how did you figure this out? And how would I go about doing that? Because that's where the key is. That's what you really want to learn, because it's important for work too. When your boss comes in someday and says, I have a project I want you to do, and here's one page on it. And you have to figure out what to do, no matter what your job is. Nobody's going to say, and here's the instructions. You have to figure it out. And that could be a really good thing to learn. What year are you in school? You got 2 years to learn this. That's great. That's a great time to start this kind of thing. And that's why I say you want to slow down or wean off some of these accommodations. So you might take it as a personal goal to learn how to make study guides over the next 2 years. That would be a really good thing. And I guarantee you, you will have friends at college coming to you saying, can you help me make a study guide? Because I don't know how to do that. And we have a lot of students come in that don't know how to do it, and they have to learn at academic support. Disability Services sometimes has tutors, but usually that's only in a specialized program. Good question. Okay, let's do a few more. We want to really look at essential adult competencies. And this is from Jim Loomis, who some of you may know. He's retired now, but a psychologist who worked in Connecticut for a long time. And we really have to look at motivation. You know, what are we looking at? A student who wants to go to college or really doesn't? Somebody who wants to go to work or really doesn't? Where's the motivation? And then we've talked about self-regulation. But the other thing we want to look at is initiation. Is the student initiating those job applications? Is the student initiating those college applications? Or is it all mom and dad? Excuse me. I speak with lots of parents who say, we're applying for a job at ShopRite. And I say, unless you're going to work at ShopRite, I think your student is applying to a job at ShopRite. The student has to be front and center here. And just like if the student is going to college, if the parents have to do the entire college search, we need to go back and look at the goal. Going to college is a lot harder than the college search. And if the parents are doing the whole search, the student's really not ready to go. And you have to think about that. The initiation is very important, as is reciprocal communication. Can your student have a back and forth conversation for either work or school? Social skills, almost every student I have ever worked with in college has said to me, no social skills training, Jane, please, I could teach the class. I don't need the social skills training. It's putting it into practice that I need help with. And that's really what it is. So we want to make sure that our students have lots of those opportunities for that social skills practice. And we've talked too much about executive function already. And so this is from an internship supervisor who said to me, are you kidding? Can he do the job? He could have created the program for our entire facility. But it doesn't matter if he can't wear clean clothes to work. That's really what we're thinking about here. Do you have to remind people to take a shower or brush their teeth? Could you work next to this person, whether they're your student or not? That's what you need to think about, and not just for college, but for work. And I could change this to lots of different things, not including hygiene. You know, can he talk to the person next to him? Can he greet the boss when he comes in? All those things, the little things that we don't think about, because there's really some common problems at the next level that we have to consider. Getting overwhelmed, sometimes seeing the big picture. Yes, the time management and the multitasking and the initiation we all have to deal with. Sometimes in jobs or in school, it's dealing with the public. Can you deal with lots of people coming and going? We've talked a little bit about the criticism and feedback, and I love what West Hartford is focusing on. What is it tomorrow night? Something about anxiety? There's thank you, the anxious generation. Yes, the stress overload. We have to think about that. And that really is a huge issue for a lot of our students. And how are we dealing with that? And what strategies do the students have that they're bringing to the next level? I have lots of students ready to tell me, both at work and at college, that they're anxious. But when I say, okay, I understand that as a huge issue. So what are your strategies that you put into place? Nothing. I got nothing. That's what we need. We need to have those strategies. So what are we going to do at work when we get anxious? What are we going to do at school when we get anxious? So we know that whatever we're doing next, there's going to be stressful situations. We want to know the more particulars. What precipitates a true crisis? And what does that look like? How does the stress manifest itself? Are there behaviors? We know behavior is always communication. So if it is, what are those behaviors so that I might know what's being communicated? What is it interacting with others that causes stress? And what are those strategies or calming methods? And does the student have those? And if they're taking medications, then who at that next level needs to know about that? Is there someone at work who needs to know? Is there someone in a transition program that needs to know? Is there someone at the college that needs to know? Those are all really important questions. And then probably the most important is safety. A lot of our students are very supervised, prior to graduation. And then sometimes, no matter where you're going for the next level, there is a lot less and maybe no supervision at all. So you really want to know what those safety things are, both at the transportation, getting back and forth. Do you know how to cross the street? Do you know how to take a bus? Do you know how to take a shuttle system around a campus? That can be really important. For day programs, the same thing. My son is in a day program in Bristol Adult Resource Center. He's much more independent there than he ever was in school, part of which is wonderful, part of which he needed to be ready for. So there's all sorts of safety things, both in work and then, of course, in social life. We might know much more about who our kids are hanging out with up through high school than we ever will after high school, whether it's at work or whatever they're doing next. So these safety things, and then safety online. Cyber safety is crucial. And having those kinds of classes or information behind you is really important. BRS is the Bureau of Rehab Services. They work with Connecticut citizens to make sure that people with disabilities get some type of work or work experience. They are not a job agency, but they help do a lot of training. They do help you find jobs. They have a summer work experience program, an internship program. Level Up is available in the high schools, and your kids might be involved in that. If not, you may want to get them involved in that. There's certain criteria, though, to meet for Level Up, and both Beth and Neil can help with that. We went through all of this. You're talking about anxiety tomorrow night, so I am going to skip that. Let me go through here and talk a little about independence, because we really want to start building that independence as soon as we can. What we know is we can help independence by building predictable routines. And I know many of you already have most of those in place already. You want your child or your student to be choosing some of the activities they're doing that are not required, like school related. You want your kid to help. Give them those chores, make sure they're done. Let the child solve problems. We often run in to make sure that their problem doesn't get bigger, and so we solve the problem and we take away that opportunity to learn what to do when there is an issue. So if we don't let the child solve some problems and make some mistakes, we're taking away all that independence. And we want to really encourage projects that people have to see through from beginning to middle to end. The whole thing, not stopping, not saying I'm giving up, but really encourage the entire thing. And these are the kinds of things that often we don't have opportunities for, because that is what causes stress. And these are the kinds of questions I ask. And I often use the old-fashioned stress thermometer. What's going to cause you stress if you have to look for a different parking space every day? Is that going to, I have some colleagues at the colleges, nothing makes them more upset than someone took my parking space. That's my parking space. And does that cause you stress? They're out of the foods you like to eat when you get to the dining hall at work or at college, or the professor leaves a note on the classroom, they moved class today. Is that going to cause you stress? You're called on in class to discuss a reading with the student next to you. Is that going to cause you stress? You want to think about all those things that are more controlled where your students are now than they will be at the next level. We've talked about self-regulation, so I'm skipping that. And the only thing I want to say about motivation is parents, really talk to your student to make sure where the choices are coming from. At that next step, if the only reason the student is doing whatever it is they're doing is because mom and dad said I should, then whoever is working with that student is going to have a hard time getting them invested. It has to come from within, and we see this over and over. Do you want to be at college? No. Then why are you here? Mom and dad said I had to. Okay. Well, maybe that meant that work wasn't a good option, or that there wasn't another school nearby. Tell me more about that. What is it you want to do? I want to play video games. Well, that's not an option. You can't spend all day playing video games. So you really want to break things down and use small rewards. And if the student says, I just don't know what I want to do. Then you try some different things. And there's lots of people who don't. Most of us did not know at 17 or 18 what we wanted to do. We really didn't. You know, there were a few choices, and we had to make one. But it's hard to really make those decisions, especially now when there's so many different things available. You know, do we go to work? Do we go to a transition program? Do we work part-time and take a few courses? Do we go to school full-time and maybe work a few hours? It really is something that has to be discussed and decided upon. We've talked about social issues. I want to talk strategies for a minute. We have talked about executive function. So one of the things that you can do to start that, I suggest 3 small whiteboards, the little 8.5 by 11. One in the bedroom, one in the kitchen, and one at the door where the student leaves for school. And no more than 3 things on that whiteboard in each room. And to begin with, the parents decide what goes on the whiteboard. In the bedroom, it might be take a shower, brush your teeth, put your laundry in the basket. It might be comb your hair, whatever is appropriate, make your bed, whatever's appropriate for your family. In the kitchen, it's got to be make your lunch or eat your breakfast or make your breakfast or take your meds, whatever's appropriate, those 3 things. And then out the door to school, whatever the student has to remember without being reminded. Don't forget your backpack. Don't forget your permission slip. You know, do you have your ballet slippers for ballet class? You have a dentist appointment after school. As each thing gets either remembered or put in the backpack or done in the kitchen and bedroom, it gets checked off by the student. It has to be visual. It has to be active. They have to check things off. Once they have mastered that, and all 9 things are getting checked off each day, then the parent and the student together start figuring out what goes on the board. This can take a week, it can take a year. It depends on the individual. But this turns into skills that go from home to school, to work, to the grocery store, to what we need to make a list. Because I would guarantee that if you asked most of your students to go through the kitchen and determine what you need at the grocery store, very few could do it. And this is how to start building those kinds of skills, that you want things noted down when they need to be. And a lot of us either learned it by watching other people, or we picked it up from parents who did this kind of organization, or somebody suggested it to us. And maybe the students that we're raising need things more structured in that way. And that's what moves to those Post-its around your monitor of what you need to get done, or that to-do list you keep at work and one at home. We want to teach those skills that are going to be strategies that are going to take them into that next level. It also develops that executive function so that you're no longer needed as the prosthetic frontal lobe. The other part, parents, that is difficult, once you have that strategy moving forward, you have to stop the, did you remember? And don't forget you have to pull back on that so that the student realizes if there's no permission slip in the bag, it's because I didn't check it off and put it in the bag. That's executive function and responsibility. So we need to, and that's not just stuff taught in the 6 hours at school. It's got to happen at home. Planning in a calendar. I can't tell you how many people I work with, the young people that get a work-study job or something and come in and I say, okay, so do you have next week's hours in your calendar? It's all up here. No, it's not. And it's too much to stay up there. I need it out of there. And I always say we need something like a USB. We need to get it out of here. I need that space for other things. Let's put it somewhere. By the time you're out of high school, you need another kind of planner. You need things written down somewhere. Everybody does. I don't care if it's on your phone. I don't care if it's on a paper calendar, wherever it is. You got to have some sort of organization. So that has to start as soon as possible. And then organization on the computer. I bet every student in the room, if I ask them to find a certain video game on their computer, they can do it like that. If I ask them to find the paper that's due tomorrow, It might take 15 or 20 minutes. And that's a problem, because if you have 30 minutes to meet with someone, and it takes 20 to find what you're looking for. So make sure there's some sort of organization on the computer, maybe help put folders together or something, because if you can find that video game, you should be able to find that assignment. But it's a matter of having it organized in a certain way. So, once again, we're not waking anybody up tomorrow, right? There we go. By the end of high school, students should be running their own IEP meetings. And if there's something in their documentation or in their IEP that they don't understand, that's self-advocacy. Can somebody explain what it means that I didn't master this? That's the kind of thing that can happen when somebody's taking that leadership role. And I've seen students who are going to day programs run their own IEP meetings with some assistance. So I really think it's just a matter of getting people ready. Scheduling your own appointments. If you need to go to the doctor, if you need to get a haircut, if you need to refill medication or order a pizza, our students can do this. And that's one less thing they have to learn after they leave home. So let's get all that started now. Most of that is online or very easy on the phone. And we tend to do it because it's easier and we know it's taken care of. We're teaching that responsibility. Get your students to do that. Using that time management system, our students really need to volunteer somewhere or get a part-time job. It teaches more than we ever can in lots of different places. And we're so concerned about people doing well in school that we forget they're not learning those work skills. And I have employers say to me daily still, after all these years, I will hire someone with work experience over a good GPA any day of the week. A good GPA tells me this person knows how to be a student. Work experience tells me they know how to dress for work, be an employee, respond to a supervisor. That's what I want in an employee. So make sure, these parents who say they don't have time to work, they have a 3.9 average. Well, but the kid next to him might have a 3.7, but they've got a resume with 4 jobs. They're getting the job. That's the important thing for us to remember. And then if you need those independent living skills classes and it's not happening at home, then find that independent living skills class. If that's where it's got to happen, then let's find it and do what needs to be done. So students, what do you need to do? Learn about your disability. What's important and what do you need to know? Learn about yourself. Ask questions of all the people who know you best. Find a community. It really helps if you know other people that have similar challenges to you and similar strengths to you. What a wonderful opportunity. When you're on a campus, whether it's a work campus or a school campus, find the resources and use them. They're there for you to use, but if you don't reach out, they won't get used. You really want to find a mentor. Find somebody who does something you like and learn from them. And you want to really use your passion or figure out what your passion is, because we know that successful students understand and accept their disability. They know what doesn't work. They eventually have really good regulatory skills. They become internally motivated. This doesn't just happen over time. It doesn't happen instantly. It happens over time. Oops, did I time out? Oh, it's okay, we're almost at the end. I am. See, this is the kind of day I've had, Neil. That's what I told you. My internet would suddenly go out. Well, that's okay, because I'm on the last slide besides my email, and I can tell people that. Anyway, the last part of that was the students become excellent self-advocates. And the last slide is that we have to remember the goal. The goal is not just some sort of degree or certificate. The goal is independent, successful adulthood. That's what we all want for all of our kids. And that's what we really have to keep our mind on. It's not that dream job or that job everybody's thinking about. It's that successful adulthood, whatever that means. So we have a few minutes left for questions. And then if we don't get this back, I'll just give you my email. Oh, thank you. See? I don't know what you did, but I needed you at my house today. See? Okay, let's see if I can get this one up. Next. there we go. Yeah, the independence. Okay, so we'll skip through these. Oh yeah, I think this is important. A quote from Wayne Dyer. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think that that's really important because often we look at our kids in one way, and sometimes when we try and just change the way you look at your kid for a couple days and see what happens, it can make a huge difference. So these are our books. This is the book that's coming out in the spring and has a lot of the information that we just talked about tonight. And that's my email. So I will leave that up. Questions? What are you thinking about? Did I stress you all out? I don't want you to leave stressed and no questions. No, you're ready to go home, right? Okay. Questions? Or you think? Yes, go ahead.
Is there a or something that we can go to that provides a listing of kind of like the different opportunities that you've talked about tonight, as far as going to a 4-year, going to a community? I hear you talk about a transition program. I've not heard of a transition program. I don't know what that is.
If your student was eligible for a transition program, someone at the high school would talk to you about it. So not knowing your student, I can't tell you which level you would be looking at. There's a few, so I'll tell you about a few that I like. At our website, which is collegeautismspectrum.com, we focus on degree-seeking specialized autism programs. So it's a very particular thing. So if you have a student with autism who wants to go to get a degree, these are the specialized programs, and we have a long list at collegeautismspectrum.com. If your student is looking for ID programs, if they have an intellectual disability, there is a great site called thinkcollege.net, and but that's only for students who have an intellectual disability. There's a really good, I have to remember the name. I think it's called Top 10 Tools to See If You're Ready for College. And it's from Beacon College in Florida. So if you look up beacon.edu and just Google, in the search, put top 10 tools, it should come up. It's from one of their specialized programs. Otherwise, talk to me. I'll try and give you some idea of where you might be headed. And most...
In school, right? I assume.
I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what they're hearing in school. I think it depends
what kind of program they're in, but I would think that the teachers are guiding them towards what their options might be. Is that a good way to put it?
That along with counselors with junior planning and senior planning.
Okay, so guidance counselors also are giving a lot of that information. I think that would be, I think it is confusing for a lot of people. And it was for me. My son was going to a day program, so I assumed that I would just be told what day program he was going to. Surprise! That's not how it worked. And I was like, oh, then what do I do? And I was sort of given a list of the day programs, and it was make appointments and go see them and see which fits your kid. And I was like, I don't really know. I learned quickly. So because I had to. So I went to visit all the programs. I brought some friends and colleagues with me so that we could all sort of figure out, gee, is this what we're looking for? I think it depends what you're looking for, and the schools can only do so much because they can't place each individual person, and because it depends which programs your student gets into. So it can be a difficult decision. You have to really, and sometimes you try something and it works great. And sometimes you try something and it doesn't work and you have to go back and revamp and try something else. And that's maybe not a bad thing because maybe you thought this was the right way to go and now you have to try something different. Other questions? Yes.
So I very much appreciate everything that you've been saying. But I'm stuck on something.
Okay. Tell me.
Very early on, you said we are so fortunate here in West Hartford because we have such a great special needs program. But within that special needs program, what that really on the ground means is they have accommodations. And you're also saying
that those accommodations aren't going to help them in college. So I'm kind of like, okay, I worked really hard to get my kid accommodations. Now what? Like, how do I get it from there to there?
When I'm meeting families who are in middle school or high school, and they're like, I'm going to
For this and this and this. And I'm like, let's not fight for this or this or this. Yeah, which is great. And a lot of that maybe helped your student get to where they are now. And that means, wonderful, they'll be ready for that next step. So that means all those great accommodations that they got in West Hartford will prep them for that next level, where they may not have the level of accommodations that they had in high school. Because chances are they will not have the level that they're getting now. You know, if your student has things like, well, in math, you only have to do half the homework, that's not going to happen. If they have something like, you know, if there's a 5-page paper due, you do 2 pages. That's not going to happen. So it doesn't mean that that wasn't good while it was happening. But if you were doing those things just so the student got good grades, but they didn't have an opportunity to maybe learn that within their specific disability, how do they go to that next level and write the 5-page paper? That may be that now is the time to transition out of some of those accommodations to get the student ready, depending on what level they're going to. It depends what they're going to do. And some certificate programs are very hands-on and specific, and they're not based on lecture and test. So that all those accommodations got them to that level of taking the certificate program. Again, it's difficult to do this kind of talk and meet everybody's different needs, because some of your students needed every accommodation they got in high school, and some of them maybe need a few less in order to get ready for the next step, and some didn't even use the ones they had and should have, so they'll be more ready for the next step. So it's hard without knowing the particular circumstances. I know what you're saying. I think we're all, as special ed parents, taught that we have to accommodate our students as much as we can to make them successful, which is helpful. But it depends how long you keep those accommodations going and at what point you start teaching compensatory strategies rather than just accommodations. Because mostly, sometimes there's a few pieces that can happen in school depending on the student and depending on what you're getting them ready for. Again, I'm talking in such generalities because I have no idea the student I'm talking about. And if the student is ready for compensatory strategies, and if compensatory strategies are possible for the student, then yes, a lot of it is the parent, and some of it is saying, I know that's in the IEP, but I want to back off of that and work more on compensatory strategies, which is different. So again, it depends. Yes? Say that again.
What is that word you said? Compensatory strategies? What does it mean?
Compensatory strategies mean being able
to do something that you may not think you're able to do, but you do it in a different way. So you might do something a little differently. You might write using voice input on a computer instead of typing in the computer. You might think about things in a different way in order to elaborate on an essay or on a test that you have to write a narrative. That's a compensatory strategy. There's lots of compensatory strategies. That was a little tiny bit. Other questions? We're a few minutes over time, and I teach time management, so I'm really dedicated to being on time. Anything else? I will stick around a few minutes if you have some individual questions. I don't know if we'll get kicked out of the room or if the weather is terrible. Yes?
So let's say the student right now in high school, they have all this like extra help. Let's say because for 2 years they've been doing so good that the teachers recommended for them to stop the fees. Would you recommend for the next 2 years for them to stop the extra help so maybe they'll prepare them better, or to continue?
Again.
What would be your advice on that?
Without knowing the student?
I'm sorry. Without knowing the student, it's really hard for me to answer. I think if the teachers are saying you can back off, they know best. And they're the ones that see your student in school. we all have to remember how different our kids are at school and at home. Our students act very differently at home than they do at school. So if the teacher's saying we can back off a lot of this, they're doing great, I would trust the teachers. And I'm sure you have a good relationship with them. So I would.
Sometimes, it happens that you have to fight a lot more to be able to get that extra help. So it's like the afraid of they take it away and then can you even get it back before high school finish if needed?
I really understand what you're saying, because I had a lot of those feelings myself. And
I think all I can tell you is from my own experience, whenever I backed off, I was a little happier afterwards, because some of the things that I was looking for my student to learn, it either wasn't going to happen or it had to happen in a different way than in a traditional classroom. So I think it depends what you're looking for in what you're thinking of eliminating. So let's talk for a few minutes after. That might be able to help. I want to thank you all, not only for coming out in this terrible weather tonight, so thank you so much. I want to thank both Chris and Beth for inviting me. It was an honor to spend some time with you. But thank you for all you do. Students especially, I know how hard you're working, and I really appreciate that you came out tonight. And parents, I have walked in your moccasins, and I appreciate everything you're doing. And just know you are doing the best job you can with the information you have at this moment in time. So you really have to trust yourself and your gut and your student, and you can research and try and make decisions. But again, we all see the decisions that get made, but we don't see the choices. And you can think about it, but don't get yourself totally stressed, because the reality is whatever works out will work out. And if it doesn't, you'll find another path. And often that alternate path is often where a lot of us end up. So thank you so much, and thanks for all you do, and thank you to our camera people for hanging in there with us. Thank you.